Today, I'm excited to have Samantha O'Neill with me today, and we're going to be talking about her company, DECA Dance, having competitions and the Unconvention. And the reason I wanted to have Samantha on today is because I've heard from multiple of my clients saying that her events are kind of the breath of fresh air. It's the easier weekend for them in terms of stress and things like that. And I said, you know what? That is not a common thread that I hear with people who have busy competition weekends. So I said, let's have her on the show and we'll have just an honest conversation. And I think a lot about how she runs her company and also being a parent that translates also to the studio ownership journey. And I'm sure we have a lot to learn. So, Samantha, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am honored and excited to be here. We met a million years ago at a dance teacher conference
Yes.
with Gold, and we just keep crossing paths here and there. And we're like, hey, at UDMA and all those teacher events. So I'm so glad that we are finally getting together to collaborate. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So tell us, for those of people who are not familiar with you, tell us a little about yourself.
So, my name is Samantha. I am the owner and founder of DECA Dance Competition and Unconvention most recently. I have a fabulous husband, Steve, who is on site with us all the time. He's one of our sound techs as well as one of our designers for different things. He does all the crazy trussing setups and those kinds of things. And we have two wonderful little babies, Maxine and Xander. She's going to be 3 in October, and Xander is going to be 10 months next week. And they travel around with us with my mom. When we're a little bit more local, they stay at my mom's house. So my mom is also a part of the team. And we are wrapping up our sixth regional season and getting ready for nationals and convention and our Face of DECA event and all the crazy things that come with the end of the season.
Awesome. It's that time of year, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is.
So let's start at the beginning. What inspired you to start DECA?
I would say probably back in like 2016 or maybe even a little bit before that, a friend of mine who is now on staff, both of them, they are now married.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, when I say we're a family company, we are a family company. Um, my friend, who is also maid of honor in my wedding and vice versa, we had a conversation one day when we were in Atlantic City. I really want to start this dance competition. Like, I'm so tired of just hearing people complain about different things, and I feel like we could fix a lot. And it's not to poo-poo anybody else. It's just I grew up as a competitive dancer. I grew up dancing at some of the competitions that are still around, and I'm grateful for those experiences. But I just think the way that the competition industry has shifted, the needs are changing based on some of the companies that have been around forever and some of those companies that are not around. We competed at Talent Olympics and Stars on the Rise and Star something, I can't remember. But they were I remember we were at our first competition on a stage outside of a ballroom in the early 2000s or the late 1990s. And that was a huge change when it was just being on a stage versus being in a ballroom and the lights are all on. So it's so funny to think back to some of those memories that I have. And then I went to school for theater and dance and I graduated and I taught very young at my hometown studio that I grew up at. And I had always been involved with, the competition team at the studio that I taught at after I graduated. It was just always so long and we like kind of dreaded it. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to feel like that. And when I got with Vanessa, I said, I really want to start a competition. And she was like, okay, let's do it. I'm here. And, it was a really big conversation when it happened, and then it kind of fizzled out, and it just have never fizzled out completely. And over the course of the next 2 years, I was running into people that I loved and that I trusted and that I respected. And I was like, hey, if I start a dance competition, would you come judge? Hey, if I start a dance competition, would you run backstage? Hey, and that's kind of how it happened. And then we got to the point, I was at a very pivotal point in my life where I had had a very tragic loss, very sudden loss. And very shortly after that loss, I was introduced to my now husband. And his first question to me, once we started talking, was, "What lights your fire?" And I was like, "Oh God, I don't know. That's a question." And I said, "Let me get back to you." And he was like, "Okay." So we had another conversation, and I said, "I really want to make a difference in the dance industry." And I said, "I really think I have some great people in my corner. I have a great support system." I said, "I think if change can be made, I really think we can do it." And he was like, "Okay, well, if you want to do that, you have to give it 100%." And I heard, "Quit your job and do this thing you know nothing about." So I quit my teaching job and I went to subbing, so that I could just work on my business that I didn't know much about.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it evolved from. We started officially in 2019 with a very small, probably 10 kid convention.
Okay.
Um, and from there, it just kind of gradually grew. We had our first event for competition in 2020 in January. And then we had geared up for two or three more events that inaugural season. And that didn't happen. So
Right.
we just kind of pivoted with the rest of the world. That July, we had an event indoors. We were small enough to kind of fly under the radar and new enough where nobody was going to really push back about the rules that are different, because we're not the traditional dance competition. And nobody seemed to really care about it, which is a big
Mm.
concern that I had, because of the different policies, because of the four judges, because of all the things. I anticipated a lot of pushback, and because of COVID, we didn't get any of that. People just wanted to get their kids in front of judges. They didn't care if it was inside, outside, on a stage, lights on, lights off. Like they just didn't care. So we did one event in July, and it was the weekend before the governor shut down to 25 people per room or in a
Oh,
space.
yeah, I
So we
remember
were
that.
very, very fortunate that we made it happen. We helped a few dance studios put on recitals, um, because people weren't renting things, and they were like, as long as you can follow the guidelines, we're fine. So we had a 200 entry, or give or take, 220 entries over the course of 4 days, because we had one studio at a time. We had an hour in between to clean everything. I did a big Zoom call with all of the attending studio owners, walking through the space just so everybody kind of knew what the layout was, making sure that, there were no traffic jams. Not that there were going to be any major issues because it was only one studio at a time. But I mean, my husband and I, at the time we weren't married yet, but we drew out on a big whiteboard what the traffic pattern was going to be to keep people flowing and keep things moving. I look back now on that event specifically. My husband built a 30-foot by 12-foot backdrop out of PVC pipe and clearance curtain that didn't match
Wow.
for our backdrop. So we have come quite a ways
Yeah.
from PVC backdrops.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
mentioned the long weekends. Were there other things that kind of made you say there's got to be a better way?
Yeah, I mean, I started just kind of scouring the internet for different reviews of different things, and talking to the moms at the studios that I was teaching about, and I kind of made three lists. It was we can fix this pretty quickly, I think. This is going to take some time, but it's possible. And then I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. We'll get there. You can just stay over there for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we kind of split those things up, and just talking to people, talking to different studio owners, talking to different friends, talking to teachers and, people from my past that weren't necessarily teachers anymore, or their studio had closed down, not related to COVID, just
Yeah.
every company has its season. And just dance moms, especially because they get it from both ends. They get the studio end as a parent, and then the competition end as a parent. So just kind of surveying all these people and seeing like what they wanted
Right.
and what they would love to see, or what their expectation was going into a long weekend. And the kids, a perfect example is last nationals was our first nationals. and we had the party, the gala at the end of the, group day before the dance off. And the kids were like, okay, this is fun. We were like, what's up? Is everything okay? They're like, we danced for 4 days. We just want to hang out.
Yeah.
And they were like, I said, all right, well, what do you guys want? And they were like, I don't know. Nobody ever asked us. And I said, all right.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, okay. So the parents were across the hall living their best life. So they infiltrated the kids' party and we're living it up with the DJ and the 360 photo booth and stuff like that. So I said, all right, well, how about we do a parent prom next year and let the parents go wild. And while the parents are at parent prom, the kids can have like a s'mores night or a movie night or something like
Mm.
that where they can still get together. We can still
Yeah.
play music, but it's just a little bit more low key. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, that would be amazing." So I was like, "Okay, that's an easy enough fix." So just kind of taking that mentality of like, "Well, what do you want?"
Yeah.
Kind of has been the leading force between a lot of conversations. And, we've gotten a lot of feedback this season from teachers, and it's truly the best compliment. It's like you got inside my head
Yeah.
and like here it is.
Yeah.
And I said, we are trying really hard to cater to the studio director and the teacher. I was never a studio owner,
Yeah.
but I worked very closely with my studio director growing up, and my studio director that I taught at after I graduated. I got a behind the scenes look of a lot of what went on into planning things and prepping things and where the gaps were, for both the dancer and the studio faculty. That partially played into a lot of things as well. And just I always wanted to do something really different.
Yeah.
And this is that every year something is elevated. So like our scoring system started at like 7 or 8 different areas of scoring. The
Right.
judges were like, it's a little overwhelming. There's so many areas, but when you just do one score, there's not a lot of answers. So we tried to break it down a little bit differently. It was too much, so we adapted it. And then when COVID happened and nobody could get costumes, we took out the costume score
Right.
and we just put it in as presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a $5 Amazon top or a $500 Kelly top, it's not going to make you dance different.
Right.
It was something that I felt wasn't relevant, especially for the time, and it just never came back. So,
Yeah.
little things like that. We're very committed to keeping our core values and intentions in place, but everything around us is always changing. I mean, there's new TVs, there's the bells and whistles of things, just different things to try and elevate the experience, for whether it comes from the kids or whether it comes from the studio owners. As a teacher, we didn't have DoorDash when I was teaching and we were at events. So you were very reliant on appreciative offering parents. And if it wasn't for parents who would run out and grab something when their kid had a break, you were eating cold pizza from the night before.
Yeah.
And there was just not a lot of options unless the venue had food or things like that. But in some of these areas when you're in high school, there's nothing around. So that's where we said we got to feed these teachers. I remember being irate and hungry and taking it out on the kids. And because I was cranky. So when you're feeding your teachers and you're feeding your studio staff like actual food and not just chips and soda and coffee, I mean, we have those things. We need protein to operate. We
Right.
need like actual sustenance. That was a no-brainer for me. And that's our teachers' lounges, varying levels, depending on the venue and what our restrictions are. But some of our teachers' lounges are fully catered by the venue.
Mm-hmm.
And some of our teachers' lounges are fully stocked Keurig, coffee bar, and we order Panera or we order salads or we order pizza and subs and different things like that. There's always going to be food you're going to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned the values. What are some of the values that you would say you have as a company?
Um, Really it's a matter of just a family-friendly event.
Okay.
There's varying levels of that, and you can't put rules and policies on like morals.
Mm-hmm.
We just say, we want kids dancing to age appropriate music, age appropriate costumes, and age appropriate, music and content.
Right.
And that even has evolved over the life of DECA. We
Okay.
have a part of the age appropriateness score. So it's its own beast in our
Hmm.
where the judges can feel, adjust how they feel. And we always encourage it to be addressed in the critique, but of course at the end, hey, this is a note for the teacher. Uh, and that's something that we've always been really passionate about. Again, we've gotten a little bit stricter from where we started. In the beginning, there was nothing really. The judges are doing so much, and because we have the live critique, and because we had so many scores and so many things going on, it was a lot to monitor.
Right.
So we added in the routine monitor last season, and that person's responsible for making sure that all the rules are being followed, things are appropriate, so on and so forth, just making sure that everything is where it needs to be and really just keeping it as fair as humanly possible. When it comes to making sure that kids are in the right levels, that's where our DECA distinctions monitor comes into place. Making sure that our judges are educators first. We're not just bringing in people who have been on Broadway. Our core value is like education first and making you as a dancer walk away with something that you didn't have when you walked in the door. So
Yeah.
whether it's a connection, whether it's something from the live critique, or just an experience that you were able to have that you wouldn't have gotten somewhere else, that's what we want to bring to the table for the kids and for the teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. How did the unconvention idea come to life?
So our unconvention, my husband is a drummer, and
Okay.
we always have crazy conversations about, what if we could do this or what if we could do that? And we talked about having live music, and it was a big undertaking originally when I had thought about it. And very unexpectedly, we lost one of our own last season in January, right before our first event. And she was a powerhouse musician and performer and educator, and she was one of our original judges, and she did a lot of our in-studio events. We actually have an award now in her honor, the 110% award in honor of Miss Andrea Michaels. And we work very closely with her sister who put together the Andrea Michaels Performing Arts Foundation. And we thought it would be a great way to kind of keep her involved in conventions by adding that live music element. Like I said, it was something we always wanted to do,
Yeah.
but it just felt like the right timing. So when it comes to our unconvention, we've always had the more unconventional styles, like Latin, Bollywood. Um, and this past season, we added African dance to it with live African drums. It was, I mean, I was crying. It was awesome. Um, just to see the kids so engaged and so out of
Yeah.
their comfort zone and, start really uncomfortable. And then by the end, laughing, having a good time, and really running out of the room to show their teacher, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
Or getting, DMs on social media of kids doing the choreography, in their living rooms a week later.
Yeah.
So like those kinds of experiences is what Unconvention is all about. And, our convention is structured very differently anyway.
Hmm.
We focus a lot on across the floor.
Hmm.
We focus on a warm up. We try to bring in different elements of a warm up. So sometimes you have relative motion come in and support us for that. We've had Synergy Wellness come in and do that as well, do some cool down type of things to give the kids tools that they can use outside of convention.
Yeah.
Um, so they have an hour-ish, give or take a few minutes. And the focus is a warm up, something center, something across the floor, and then taking all of those pieces and putting it into something choreography wise.
Right.
But the choreography is not the focus of the convention at all.
Yeah.
We started out doing, free solos and scholarships and this and that, and it's not what's important when you come to convention. So
Yeah.
during our season, we give away scholarships and passes and different things like that to come to convention because we want kids to be able to experience those things, especially now that we have the live music. unless you're dancing in college or you're doing community theater,
You're not getting that.
you're not getting to dance with
Yeah.
a live musician.
Yeah.
You know? So that's something that I think we're able to offer now to the kids who maybe are recreational dancers who aren't going to go to dance for college, but still
Right.
deserve that same opportunity.
I think that's so awesome. When I saw the email come through, I don't remember when it was. I saw the email come through. I'm like, okay, finally. Because for me, okay, when maybe I'm dating myself, but when I was going to college, when people talked about dance, anything other than ballet, modern, jazz, and maybe if you were lucky, tap, it was called world dance.
Mhm.
And I said, that's like really, I studied cultural anthropology and religion. I was like, that's really, there are so many cultures of the world and
Mhm.
so many countries with so much rich history in dance, and to clump everything else
Mhm.
into world dance or folk dance, like you can't you can't bundle it all as one
Yeah.
thing. And so seeing that those different styles of dance are an opportunity that a child can take before they even get to the university level,
Mhm.
um, is really huge. And I know that some of my faculty at my studio have, um, they were surprised, like Rutgers University, they changed their dance program. And they're like, whoa, there's all these new requirements and things. And they're finally getting exposed to a diversity of styles because so many
Right.
colleges only focused on modern and ballet.
Right.
And I think
Or
like
musical theater.
yeah, exactly. And so I think that like you're totally spot on with, there are all these other things that help us as dancers, help us to grow and play homage to, hey, there's all these different cultures,
Absolutely.
all these different styles of dance that some of them, like you said, you're going to feel uncomfortable at first. And then
Right.
you discover something new. And it really helps with their versatility as a performer as well.
Yeah, I mean, I took one African dance class when I was in high school.
Yeah.
And we took a field trip. I don't even remember where it was, but our choreographer for show choir and for the musical and stuff at that time was our dance teacher. And the
Yeah.
dance program was brand spanking new at the high school. I was all over it. And he took us to this event, and it was an African style class. And it was so fun and it was
Yeah.
so beautiful. And I mean, this is 15 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And I still like get teary-eyed thinking about it because it impacted me,
Right.
as a young dancer who never danced this in her life, and being able to feel so comfortable in that setting just because of, the jazz experience I had. And like, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until you're in it. And that's one of the things that made us want to bring in some of those different styles. I had an experience, God, I don't even remember how long ago at this point. I was newly teaching at the studio that I taught at, and we were down the street from a traditional Indian dance studio.
Yeah.
And I don't know how the conversation happened between owners, but she was like, "Hey Sam, you want to go teach a ballet class at like a beginner level ballet class at this studio? She's going to come in and do the Bollywood class for our kids." And we were
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, great." There were a lot of similarities, and that just struck me as like, wow, there
Yeah.
really are a lot of similarities. When we're in retiré, their foot is placed against the supporting leg and it's
Yeah.
flexed versus being pointed. Our ballet is it's very lifted and it's very light. And there's those qualities in the traditional style of that classical Indian dance, but it's also very grounded at the same time.
Right.
That upper body is very lifted and light, but that bottom half is so intense.
Yeah.
And it was very conflicting. Like I was struggling because, we took the class as well.
Hmm.
And it was one of those things where I was like, everybody should have this.
Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, I wasn't even thinking of a dance competition at that time in my
Right.
life, but it was again a core dance memory that stuck with me. I have core dance memories that, aren't great that play into what went into DECA, having judges that, were lawyers and like didn't have any business being in dance, but like
Wow.
they were, like it was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, those companies are not around anymore.
Yeah.
But I mean, we remember reading bios and being like, but where's the dance?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we always make sure that we work very closely with IDA and Courtney and her amazing panels. And it's a village, and it is
Yes.
not, it's ever evolving, like I said previously. And dance is ever evolving. For a long time, I taught the advanced tap class at the studio. And then all of a sudden, the tap world shifted. And I was like, I'm not so advanced anymore. Like, I could bridge the gap, but you
Yeah.
in someone else because
Yeah.
I can't do it. And I worked really hard. I mean, I downloaded videos and subscribed to Kaylin Gray's methods and things like
Yes.
that. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to teach what you're learning, you're like, okay, my brain's gonna explode.
Right.
So, I said I can do the younger kids, I can do some more intermediate things. I said, new kids that come in that are auditioning for team, I can transition them into, get them caught up.
Right.
But just this world is ever changing. And Regold said something maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We have the ability, because we're not an industry that has industry-wide rules.
Right.
We have like, yes, people complain about it all the time, and I get it. But there's so many different flavors of studios that when you don't have regulation in the competition world, you can go to the places that align with you. And you
Yes.
don't have to poo-poo anybody else.
Yeah.
You don't have to, it's not a matter of bad mouth. I mean, I have two studio owner or competition owner friends over at True Talent and over at Legend. All three of us promote each other all the time because we all offer something so different.
Right. Right.
But we're all about the kids, we're all about the experience, and we're really passionate about, a great experience.
Yeah.
That's not to say that other people aren't, but we all offer something so different that like it's very easy to support one another
Yeah.
because it just is.
Yeah.
you know and there's over 400 competitions in the industry. There is something
Wow.
for everyone. So like, just I love the fact that there's no regulation
Yeah.
in that regard,
Hmm.
because if you're someone who doesn't like what's going on in the industry and it's an industry standard across the board, well, then the odds of those studios dropping out of competition and not participating anymore are heightened.
Right.
But when yes, I mean, I think there are definitely some areas where we could use a little extra love and
Yeah. Yeah.
attention in those terms. But if, you know, go to where you like, try everything out, travel a little bit further out of where your comfort zone is, if, your means at your studio are able to, and try something else, because you may totally love it. You may hate it. You may, not want to go back, but that's fine. You have that option.
Right.
When you have so many options and so many different flavors of studios and competitions, we're not everyone's cup of tea, and I totally respect that. And, some people don't like that we, are a little bit more intense when it comes to um appropriateness.
Right.
There have been, a few routines where we've withheld media and just said, hey, we would really appreciate if you could better edit this music before you share it.
Yeah.
Um, and just things like that, because that's how we want to be represented.
Yeah.
And then again, you introduce this DECA distinctions monitor to make sure that things are moving as fairly and as smoothly as possible. And you could definitely come into bumps and, hey, do you think this is too inappropriate? Hey, do you think this should be, there's a lot of conversations that are going on at the table to make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
So that's been hard this past season, a growing pain for sure. But we are, regulating things within our own company to be able to set our standard for things.
Yeah.
And I think if every company just kind of does that, the rest will start falling into place. And I know a lot of companies do that. They're like, hey, this didn't work, let's adjust this.
Yeah.
When stuff's
Right.
late, like, hey, our photographers family member died and we're behind. Like
Yeah.
we're human. And
Right.
I think we're starting to kind of get back into that human aspect of like these are humans.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, like I know we got on so many different topics, but when it comes to values, like these are kids.
Absolutely.
And when someone walks into our event, they are a dancer, they are an artist, they are a kid.
Yeah.
You know, we don't even with levels, we're not like, oh, this is an intermediate dancer. Like we have skill-based levels for a reason. So if you have two different solos and, you're a phenomenal perfect close to a perfect score tapper, but you've never had a point solo a day in your life and you just started point last year, but you progressed pretty quickly. So, now you have an intermediate point solo. Like,
Right.
it makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't penalize the dancer.
Right.
And that's, again, there's hiccups and road bumps that come along with the levels and different things like that. And, finding the balance between what's going on at the event and what's going on in the world, but also like knowing that this dancer is an advanced dancer and just is lacking the confidence,
Right.
or I mean, we've never had a studio enter kids in the wrong level to win.
Mm.
And that is something that I'm so proud of as an industry that we've never had that.
Yeah.
We've always, anything that's ever been bumped, people are like, oh my gosh, really? Or, like,
Yeah.
I've had teachers cry that like this is what this kid needs right now.
Yeah.
And it's like that's what we are setting out to do. And sometimes we don't know we're doing it in the moment or until after the fact. We've had really, really beautiful routines when, or receive the 110% award and the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful stories that we have seen, or the beautiful stories that we've heard from a studio owner after awards or the kid come up and thanking us. I mean, it's it gives me chills because you see that kid portrayed it on stage.
Right.
Oh, and again, like circling it back to the other extreme, like they're kids
Mm-hmm.
and they're able to move this room of people. And then you find out what the story is behind it, and you're like, wow, this kid's going to go really far because they're committed and they're passionate and it comes down to caring and just getting out what you're feeling on stage. And if we provide the opportunity for kids to really feel what they need to feel without worrying about like, oh, well, I have to, I'm in advanced, so I have to dance advanced. Like the pressure is off.
Right.
Even studio owners, like I'm so grateful that we have the studio owners that we have calling us. They're like, hey, I don't mean to drive you crazy, but I have this dance. And I'm like, no, 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 please drive me crazy.
Yeah.
It means that you care.
Yeah.
You're trying to follow the rules, and because it's skill based, it's sort of a gray area. It's skill based, but also execution based.
Right.
So when a kid has a really on day, their intermediate routine could be advanced. And if an intermediate dancer is just struggling, they have a lot going on at home, whatever the situation is, like they're right where they belong in intermediate. You
Yeah.
know, when you take that pressure away of like, oh, this kid doesn't belong in this category or whatever it is, I think it removes some of that pressure, and I hope it takes some of the pressure off of the teachers as well, um to say like, oh well, we have one advanced dancer in this trio, but it's really an intermediate trio, or whatever the scenario is. We're working really hard to kind of try and take that stress away of it and just let the routine monitor handle it, and like let the kids dance
Yeah. Yeah.
in a very blanket, simple term. Let the kids do what they do, and we'll figure out the rest.
Yeah. So, what's next for you? Do you have
Um,
anything you care to share?
um, oh gosh, I probably shouldn't, but I don't know when it's going to happen,
Okay.
but we are in the process of putting on something additional for our parents.
Okay.
Hopefully for this convention season,
Mm-hmm.
with the stress of being a dance parent and dance being so expensive.
Yeah.
I'll leave this little teaser. Hopefully, we can help alleviate some of that stress. Um, and we're going to be adding it on hopefully to our conventions. So that while your kids are dancing for 6 or 7 or 8 hours, you are not just waiting for them to be finished.
Yeah.
But just another opportunity for us to see this community for hardworking parents and humans and just giving back a little something to them and to work with each other. But that's for the parents. In terms of the kids, just continuing to expand our convention, continuing to expand our experience to new areas, and just elevating the nationals experience as much as we can. And meeting new educators. We do a lot with in-studio experience as well. Something that we introduced this year are our DECA awards, our Dedication, Education, Creativity, and Artistry awards that go out at each event. And for the Creativity and Artistry awards this year, we are bringing in DECA educators to the studio that won that award for an
Okay.
hour-long workshop. The Creativity Award winners are receiving some improvisation work. And if they're a little bit older, talking more about creating the choreography. And then the Artistry Award is kind of the studio picking a style or the kids picking a style of something that they really want to get outside of their comfort zone with, or something that they would like to learn a little bit more about. So we are in the process of getting all of those things wrapped up, and scheduled, and just doing what we do with people who love to do it too.
Yeah.
That's, as basic as that sounds, we're all really passionate on staff. We're all dancers or performers in some aspect. Like I said, my husband was not a dancer, but he's a drummer and musician and production, and he knows production and performance and things like that. So, you know, even, our photographer, like everybody has danced. And that I think just makes a big difference when they're talking to the kids because you're nervous, you've been there, don't worry
Yeah.
about it. I've
Yeah.
told the story of my pants falling down to plenty of kids um, when I was younger, to remind them that like life happens, costumes fall apart,
Right.
shoes fall off, and you just keep doing what you do because you still got a minute left,
Yep.
and it's okay. And this season, we've had some really, really beautiful moments um, where kids have forgotten to dance.
Mm.
And then they have to stand there and get their live critique. And they know they just messed up. And the judges are like, hey, it's a real moment. It's okay to be upset, cry, like
Yeah.
live in it for a second,
Yeah.
but don't live in that all day.
Yeah.
And, we're really fortunate where we've been able to experience that. And the kids are really upset. And then, you see them on stage again and they're like this bright light. You're like, oh, okay. And,
Yeah.
those are the kids that, we've said it a couple of times. We give out our Faces of DECA invitations, which is something that happens at the end of the season. And we give those kids invitations because they are resilient.
Right.
And they are kids that feel like they don't deserve something extra because
Mm.
they forgot.
Yeah.
And we don't want that taste in their mouth. And it's not a
Right.
consolation prize. It's not a here you go, you're not getting anything else. Like it has nothing to do with that at all. We want those kids to be able, because they have the ability to forget their dance, talk directly to the judge. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You don't think kids understand that. So, we want those kids to have this extra experience. So just like little things like that, and we've had some really beautiful moments between the judge and the dancer on stage, and just lots of comforting. And I mean, we've seen a lot of crazy things, but we've also seen a lot of really beautiful things. And I think as an industry, if we can circle back around to some of those more beautiful moments and
Yeah.
expand up those and see where we can fill in the gaps within those beautiful moments and use those as inspiration, I think our industry will take a nice, lovely turn for the positive.
Mm. That would be
We can hope.
fabulous.
We can
Yeah.
hope.
That would be fabulous. So, how can people find out more about Decadence?
You can always visit us at our website, decadancecompetition.com. You can find us on social media as well at Decadance Comp, and you can always check out our recaps on YouTube, which is also at Decadance Comp. So from last season just to get a little taste of maybe what our live critiques look like.
Mhm.
Those can also be found if you get into a little DECA scroll hole on our Instagram. Um, I know a lot of kids, a
Did
lot
you
of kids,
say Deca scroll hole?
I did
That is too
it
funny. Oh
because
man.
there's a lot of things. I mean, we didn't talk too much about them because it's not, the point, but like there's just so many things that are different,
Yeah.
and we get to see a little snippet of how it works.
Mm.
um, it makes the kids feel a little bit more comfortable or gives
Yeah.
teachers a little bit more insight. So I do say a deca scroll hole because you're like, oh, well, this is the tap live critique, or this is a jazz live critique, or like, what could they say about me when I'm up on stage,
Right.
or how does the sprung floor work, like those types of different things. So a deca scroll hole.
Awesome. Love it. So I will put those links in the show notes for everyone so you can learn more. And I just want to say thank you so much, Samantha, for sharing your story and what makes DECA a special place to be. Thank you
Thank,
so much.
thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It was fun.
Quick question. What would it feel like to actually take a day off without guilt, to raise your tuition with confidence, delegate more, and finally see your salary reflect all the energy you pour into your studio? That's exactly what we're doing inside my 9-week group coaching program that starts in July. Real results, real support, real change in your mindset, your money, and how you lead. If you're ready to feel lighter and more in control, apply now at thestudioownerlifecoach.com. You don't have to do this alone. Let's get it.